After the release of Spider-Man No Way Home, it is a good time to be a Spidey fan, with the movie becoming the 6th highest grossing film of all time. With the MCU and Sony working together to produce a number of new Spider-Man related projects, from villain standalone films to an entire Spider-Verse in the making, it's very clear that the Spider-Man brand will not be going away anytime soon, and it's very exciting to see what comes next. But back in December, I put a poll out on my channel to see what Spider-Man sequel pitch you would like me to make, and the clear winner was Tom Holland's Spider-Man, so that is the sequel I will be pitching today. And before you ask, yes, it has taken me 4 months to make this video. Let's just say it's been a very exhausting process. At the end of No Way Home, Peter is alone. Everyone has forgotten about him and he's living in a small apartment by himself with a new suit and a new outlook on himself. I'm not going to be trying to top the incredible spectacle of No Way Home because I honestly don't think that can be done. Instead, having a more street-level, grounded take on the character could be refreshing. Besides, it's a new start to the character and people want to see a more traditional Spider-Man in the MCU, and that's what I really want to try and tackle in this sequel pitch. So anyway, without any further ado, this is my Spider-Man 4 sequel pitch, Spider-Man, Brand New Day. The movie begins with a high-security prison. Inmates are walking single file back to their rooms when a brutal fight erupts out in the hallway, and this leads to an ominous figure walking past the fight and passing a hidden note to one of the guards. In seconds, the prison is hit with a destructive explosion from the outside. Pieces of rubble are being thrown in every direction, and walls are coming down as prisoners flock the scene, running out into the dark. Loud gunfire erupts through the prison, prisoners being caught in barbed wire that rips through their clothing, guards scrambling to make sure no one else escapes. Behind a dark, decimated wall, the ominous figure looms in the shadows before a glider rips through the wall and the figure latches onto it right before another explosion consumes the rest of the prison, leaving no victims alive to witness the figure fly out into the night. The movie begins with Spider-Man swinging through the city in his new suit, mirroring the start of Homecoming. However, there is one key difference between the two scenes, and that is the tone is now a lot darker. We see Peter's day play out in a montage, and the struggle of balancing being Spider-Man as well as a college student really starts to get to him. We see him in his small apartment with books piling up, old takeout boxes in an overflowing bin that hasn't been taken out for weeks, and a photo of him, Ned and MJ sits alone on his windowsill. He is seen being Spider-Man, saving people, and being Peter Parker, attending classes and studying. This is all shown repeatedly again and again, and the montage begins to speed up, getting faster and faster, until it suddenly just stops, and Peter is exhausted, just lying on his bed in his dark apartment, staring up at the ceiling as he listens to the neighbours fight again. It's been a year since No Way Home, and Peter's personal life is a mess. He isolates himself from everyone, and doesn't get too close to people. His life is always the same. Peter Parker, and then Spider-Man, and he continues to live both lives, very different to one another, but in both, he is struggling to keep up. Peter attends a support group, the same one that MJ also happens to attend. They talk there, but Peter knows that it's probably the closest he's going to get to her. He's given up trying to make an effort and tell her who he is for so long. He knows it's probably best not to involve her, and it's the best choice. Despite having trouble reconnecting with MJ, Peter also talks to a newcomer of the group, Miles, who Peter shares a class with at college. They both share a lot of things in common, and he begins to warm up to the idea of making new friends, as long as being Spider-Man doesn't impact on his personal life. Through the city, news of the prison explosion with 29 inmates escaping and 52 killed in the attack causes panic. This news makes Peter go cold, as he notices the tech found in the explosion is connected to the Vulture. it was reported that him and Matt Gargan, who had been jailed for killing a total of 19 people, escaped, and there is now uncertainty on the streets, and people's safety is at risk. The Vulture has gone into hiding and has not been sighted. However, Matt Gargan, nicknamed the Scorpion, has been on a rampage through the city, killing multiple people and terrorizing countless neighborhoods. Peter is determined to find the guy, but every time he gets close, he is always too late to the crime scene, and not once has Peter got a glimpse of the man. Peter feels like he keeps failing everyone who once believed in him, and makes it his mission to find this guy. Meanwhile, in a science lecture that Peter is attending at his college, his teacher introduces a new guest speaker to introduce his newfound company, Mr. Norman Osborn. Peter is shook by the name, as he remembers the man that killed his aunt, the man that tried to kill him, the man that tried to kill his friends, and took so much away from him. However, this man doesn't look like Norman Osborn that he knew. This man looks different. However, Peter isn't letting the smiling, suit-wearing millionaire play him, as letting one's innocence fool him last time resulted in the loss of his aunt, and he wasn't going to let that happen again. Norman is giving a lecture on his newfound company Oscorp, and they are opening up an internship for students to work there. Peter signs up, despite how busy he is. He knows that he needs to keep an eye on Norman to ensure he doesn't turn into the man that killed his Aunt May. Peter is accepted into the internship, and is pleasantly surprised to discover that both Ned and MJ had also been accepted through their college. When they all start working at Oscorp, Peter starts to unintentionally get close to Norman, as Norman is fond of how smart Peter is, and is always telling him how much he sees himself in him. Peter is conflicted as he sees no bad in this man, but tries to not get caught up in his words. As Norman is so fond of Peter, he puts him, Ned, and MJ on a special task. He assigns them to a high-security room and instructs the group to examine a piece of what they believe to be a small trace of alien tech from another world. From what they have gathered, it has a mind of its own, but Peter is not fixated on what they are testing, and is just happy to be in the presence of his old friends. Meanwhile, in an old underground subway that has been turned into a lair where Scorpion and his gang of followers reside. In the subway, we see high-tech weapons that have been altered and produced. Scorpion and his gang have been reprogramming and rewiring stolen tech to become even more destructive, selling it on the black market to other underground organizations, and using that money to source other highly dangerous materials to alter weapons with. His gang have been selling weapons when Scorpion had spent his time in jail, because of Spider-Man himself. But while they had been sourcing weapons, Scorpion doesn't want the weapons for himself, but rather what's in them. Most of these military weapons have a highly dangerous reactant called Ion Neptune. While most of these weapons only use a small amount to power other sources, on its own it has the capacity to send a reaction 30 miles from its original location and destroy whatever it's in its path. They have been creating 12 reactant devices and beginning to place them in specific locations in New York. So when the time comes, Scorpion can set off the timer and the devices will produce an electrical blast so large he will be unstoppable. As Scorpion is still on the loose and his rampage through New York City continues, Peter has been trying to catch the guy for months now, but has been too distracted with Norman Osborn, the internship, as well as other assignments in college that have been piling up. One night, Peter gets a signal from his phone that a man who was described as wearing a green-like armoured suit and a long extended claw was spotted 4 blocks away. Peter swings into action and makes it just in time to a safeguarded location that stores highly dangerous weapons. When Peter makes his way inside, it's dark and no one seems to be inside. Still, Peter begins to walk around when he notices a weapon in front of him at his feet. Suddenly, a green claw knocks Peter off his feet, and the voice behind him says,
"It's about time, Spider-Man."
Peter swings up behind him and begins to fight this guy, but his armor is no match for his webs. They begin to continue to throw shots at each other when Scorpion has Peter pinned against the wall and is about to impale him with his large spear-like claw. As the claw extends back, Scorpion laughs.
Best not to get in the way of any of my plans in the future.
Just then, a man in a dark red suit pulls Scorpion away from the grasp of Peter's throat and starts fighting with him. Peter, recovering from hitting the wall so hard, watches the man fight Scorpion. However, just before Peter can help, Scorpion gets away. The man in the dark red suit chases after him, and Peter follows, but they both lose him in the alley. The man in the dark red suit turns around and says, "You've got some nerve trying to take a guy down like that, kid." Peter is caught off guard, as this is the first time since everyone forgot who he is that someone has assumed his age. Peter asks who the man is, and the man reveals himself to Peter as being Matt Murdock, Peter's old lawyer, aka Daredevil. Peter is confused to see his old lawyer that helped him clear his charges to be standing there, let alone remembering who he is. Peter asks how he remembers him, with the only response he gives to Peter being,
"I'm a really good lawyer."
Spider-Man and Daredevil agree that there is no way they can take this guy down alone, and agree that they need to team up, but now needing to be cautious as Scorpion has connections to some of the biggest criminals in the city, and they are not safe. After these events, we see Peter back at Oscorp, and Norman is walking through the lab, talking to a group of investors about some of the new tech they've been working on. Peter stands in a line with the other interns, including MJ and Ned, when from outside the premise there is a loud explosion. All of a sudden, the building is hit with an explosive, and everyone in sight is thrown back by the blast, and Scorpion reveals himself. He continues to cause damage to the site, and the building is left unstable. He begins to locate the technology, smashing through glass panels to seal it. Peter gets his suit on and swings into action, but is concerned that the building will come down at any second. He launches onto Scorpion and tries to take him down himself. As the building becomes more engulfed in flames and the exits are blocked, Peter tries to break down an already unstable wall to make enough room for everyone to get out. The building becomes more dangerous and rapidly heating up, flames creating no way out of the building. Peter takes another swing at Scorpion, but before he can make impact with his armor, Scorpion gets his hands on a high-tech laser and starts shooting at Peter. Peter dodges the rapid blasts that are being fired at him, knowing that his friends are still in the burning building that is on the brink of collapsing. Peter looks down at MJ and Ned, gasping for air, when Scorpion fires a shot at Peter, and he goes flying across the lab, smashing into the high-security room that breaks open the glass cabinet containing the black alien symbiote. Peter lies there, and as he begins to get up, the symbiote latches onto his suit and begins to spread rapidly. Peter lays there for a moment, paralyzed, unsure what is going on. But when Peter gets himself up, he has a new sense of urgency. He hardly recognizes that his suit is now black. He swings back and takes another hit at Scorpion. Spider-Man and Scorpion fight it out in the building that is engulfed in flames, each taking hit after hit. All of a sudden, Daredevil comes in, smashing through a wall. He warns Peter that they need to get everyone out of the building before it collapses, and they need to leave Scorpion. But Peter's mind is blank. He can't think with the intense heat. His head is thumping, and he ignores the warning of Daredevil. Peter continues to fight Scorpion to the point where he has him pinned on the ground. He picks up the laser gun from the rubble and swings up to the highest point in the roof to get the best shot. As Peter pulls the trigger, he is caught off guard by the weight of the blast and misses. Instead, the blast hits Ned head on and his body slams up against the wall. Peter screams out Ned's name and swings down to the knee of his friend. Daredevil comes over to Peter, telling them that they have to go. He looks back to where Scorpion lay a moment ago, but he is gone. They both pick up Ned, and they make it out of the building, the moment it collapses. We transition back to Peter's apartment. Peter is angry and conflicted. His best friend is in hospital with life-threatening injuries that he may not recover from. Oscorp is no more, and Norman won't pick up his phone. And Scorpion had just escaped with high-tech weapons, and Peter is wondering if he's at fault for all of it. He hasn't had the strength to leave his apartment in days, to face the outside world, but the suit is making him act up and make irrational choices. He knows that he has to take down Scorpion, otherwise lives will be at danger. Scorpion has people on the outside, criminals who will know where he is. Peter knows it's his best chance of trying to find this guy. Peter dons the black suit and heads down to the crime hotspot of the city. For this midsection of the film, we see Peter mixing with criminals, getting into fights and beating them up, doing dodgy dealings just to try and get answers, mixing with people who had previously bought weapons from Scorpion. The symbiote makes him do bad things that Peter didn't even know he could do. Day after day, he becomes more attached to this new version of himself. Mixing with criminals and beating them up shows a new side to the character, a much darker side that not even Peter himself knew he was capable of. One night, Peter meets up with two criminals and gets into a brutal fight with them when they don't give him the answers that he was looking for. As Peter has these guys on the ground, a man pulls Peter aside off into a closed area. Daredevil takes off his mask and is shocked to see what Peter has become of himself, and had no idea that this boy was capable of all of this. He confronts him about what he's been doing and gives him the briefing about if he wants to be Spider-Man or Peter Parker. The two argue with each other and it turns into a fist fight, both of them throwing punches at each other. Peter is not taking it easy on him, and he throws one last punch that makes Daredevil stay on the ground. He looks up at Peter, where we see a glimpse of Bully Maguire shine through Peter as he yells, "I have no remorse, and I take pride in what I do." He swings off, leaving Daredevil shocked over what Peter has become. Still on the street, Peter is making his way through gangs of criminals to find Scorpion when he gets a message from a guy to meet his boss out the back of the Burke Lane bar to get answers of where Scorpion's location is. When he goes there that night, he is met with a man in the shadows who is hidden from view, but his voice is familiar. Peter gears up, ready to fight another possible false hope. But when the man reveals himself, he is met with the face of Vulture, aka Adrian Toombs. But he doesn't try and hurt Peter. Instead, he agrees to tell Peter Scorpion's location and tells him of his plan. But before Peter leaves, he asks the Vulture why he didn't want to hurt him, as he was the reason he went to jail in the first place. The Vulture sighs and responds, "Because you saved my life." Well, hold up, just pause the video. Okay, great. So as I said, I've been writing this sequel pitch for about 4 months now, and then Morbius comes along and then just completely contradicts the character of Vulture that we knew from the end of Spider-Man Homecoming. So we're just gonna ignore any Morbius end credit scenes because it's not worth changing the sequel pitch now. So anyway, I just wanted to say that. Back to the video. It brings Peter back to a time when he was just a kid, taking down a bad guy all on his own, where he still had morals, and chose not to kill, even when he had the chance. Peter had forgotten the boy he once was. What he has turned into is not what Aunt May wanted him to be, what Tony wanted him to be. He can't be Spider-Man and Peter Parker. He can't go against everything he once stood for. This thought keeps crossing over Peter as he arrives at the underground subway. Before he even catches sight of the man, he knows tonight is the night where Scorpion is going to fire up all of the devices. When Peter gets his first look at Scorpion in months, the build-up anger in him erupts. He is conflicted between the two sides of him. One side wants to wait and strike at Scorpion at the right time, but the symbiote just wants to kill him right away. The symbiote has affected him in ways that not even Peter understands himself. Before he reveals himself to Scorpion, he hides away and tries to pull the suit off, but it just keeps latching onto his Spider-Man suit. He tries ripping it all away. All of the pain and destruction slowly starts to detach from him, but there is still a large amount on his suit. As he is distracted trying to pull the Venom symbiote from his suit, he crashes into a bunch of boxed up weapons, bringing Scorpion to his presence inside the building. Scorpion slowly starts to walk around the corner as Peter is struggling to pull the symbiote off. As Scorpion reveals himself to Peter, the symbiote latches onto Scorpion. The man in the armor struggles with the symbiote as it multiplies up his armor. But when Peter's eyes adjust, he sees him clearly in front of him. The symbiote has only made him stronger and angrier. Peter is just left with his blue and red suit, and Scorpion now has the Venom symbiote all along his armor. Peter and Scorpion start attacking each other, taking hit after hit. Scorpion latches his claw at Peter as he frantically dodges the attack. Peter knows that this man is stronger, and he doesn't stand a chance against him, but what he needs to do is stop him from pulling the trigger on all of the devices, because after that it will be too late. Scorpion's gang have weapons in hand, running at Peter as Peter takes each one down, one after the other. The symbiote only makes the man more dangerous and angry, and Peter knows that from first-hand experience, the longer the symbiote is on him, the worse it will get. Peter swings at Scorpion and knocks him and his heavy armor into one of the columns of the subway. There is a shake and sparks begin to fly. Peter runs over to the controls to try and deactivate the devices, when Scorpion knocks Peter away and he begins the reaction that will set them all off. Scorpion makes his way out of the underground subway to be as far away as possible before the reaction goes off. Peter lays on the floor, his head thumping and unsure what to do. He lifts himself up and looks at the control panel. He can't pull the power from here, and there is no way to stop the reaction. Peter hears footsteps approaching from the tunnel. When the figure makes his way into the light, Peter sees the familiar face of Daredevil. Before Peter can apologize for what he did, Daredevil insists him to listen. According to the panel, there are 12 devices placed around the perimeter of New York. Daredevil tells Peter to go and find Scorpion, while he'll try and stop the reaction. Peter goes off, swinging from building to building, trying to get as high as he can to try and spot the man. As Peter lands on the roof, he can hear one of the high-pitched buzzing sounds that appears to be coming from the roof of the building. Peter locates the noise and comes across one of the devices. He tries to pull on the device, but it won't move. As Peter continues to try and destroy the device, a looming shadow appears behind him. Before he can turn around to see who it is, a fist punches him and knocks him off his feet. As he scrambles to his feet again, he can see the distorted shape of Scorpion, engulfed in the Venom symbiote. As the two begin to fight once again, there is a loud eruption that knocks the two off their feet. Loud sound waves roar through the city, making everyone start to fade in and out and shake heavily. Peter knows that this is the first device, and if it explodes, the rest will follow, and there'll be no going back. Scorpion begins to run, jumping to the next building and launching off into the sky. Peter swings up to the next building and starts firing off multiple webs at Scorpion. He continues to try and bring Scorpion closer to the ground, but every nerve in his body begins to shake, as well as the rest of the city does as well. Scorpion crashes back down onto the roof of the tall building where the first device is about to decimate this side of New York. Peter shoots one of his webs around Scorpion's extended claw. The symbiote begins to act up on the armor and make the suit tighten up with the waves of electricity that are being produced in the air. Peter notices the device that is about to be fired up, and with a split-second decision, swings Scorpion directly into the eye of the device, and in a shockwave, is engulfed in the electrical device before it was set off. Peter takes cover as the device, along with Scorpion, explodes on the roof of the building. When Peter can finally open his eyes, there was nothing left. In the coming weeks, the other 11 devices were removed from their locations around the city, and the police had begun to gather up the rest of the stolen weapons and arrested Scorpion's gang. After this, crime rates had gone down, but Peter still continued to keep his wits in case there was another threat like Scorpion's. Peter decides to take a break from being Spider-Man and just focus on fixing his personal life before he goes back to the life of being a superhero. In the final scene of the film, we see Peter and MJ at Ned's bedside in hospital, waiting for him to wake up. When he's sitting there with MJ, he feels at peace with himself and forgets the rest of his problems. He can see that she's still wearing the black dahlia necklace that he gave her in Far From Home. Peter finds the confidence to ask if she would like to get a coffee with him. She smiles and agrees, and they both leave the hospital room, and we see the two walk down the hallway, chatting with each other. The final shot of the movie is Ned laying in his hospital bed and his eyes open wide once Peter and MJ had left the room. He does a dark smile to himself and we cut to black. For the mid-credit scene, we see Norman Osborn at Oscorp walking through all of the destruction and what is left of his company. We see the man step on a broken piece of green armor that belonged to Scorpion when he had destroyed the company. The man picks it up and stares at it for a long time and says to himself, "You know how much I sacrificed." The screen goes black and a subtle green goblin laugh can be heard. For the end credit scene, we see Peter in his apartment on a call with Miles, when the door to Peter's apartment swings open and Peter drops his phone. There stands Doctor Strange. He stares at Peter and then smiles, as he says, "There's been a rift in the multiverse. We're getting the team back together. Are you in, Spider-Man?" Peter smiles, he grabs his suit, and Doctor Strange opens up a portal for the two to walk through. The portal closes, and Peter's phone lays on the floor of his apartment. From the phone, we hear Miles' voice, still on the call. "Peter? What's going on?" And there we go. That is Spider-Man Brand New Day. I know it's not perfect, but I tried to create a possible direction for the Spider-Man franchise to take after No Way Home. Personally, I'm not a comic book fan, so what I did was I took characters from previous Spider-Man comics and then tried to create a story around that and have a more grounded and grittier take on the Spider-Man character from the MCU, which I think was needed after No Way Home. Obviously, it's not perfect. The villain in this sequel pitch is very different to how he is in the comics, and his plan is just ridiculous. But I tried my best, and I'm very happy with how this sequel pitch turned out. But anyway, thank you so much for watching this video. This was easily my longest video, so thank you for watching to the end. I might do Spider-Man 5 if this video does well. I might need 4 months to write it, but I'll see how I go. Thank you so much for watching. Make sure to subscribe to the channel and like this video, and I will see you next Friday.